We've got to talk about Lawrence's and I's matchup this past weekend.
The Desmond Ritter conversation
we blocked out about 12 minutes for that, Lawrence.
Yes.
So,
well, I don't have much to say about it, so I don't know if there's 12 minutes needed. Maybe you want to talk for 11 minutes and 30 seconds of that, but
45, 11:45.
11:45.
Exactly.
All I need is 15 seconds to be like, damn.
Why
we don't ever show the guillotine league teams, right? We do that too. Why we don't show that team?
You have a good team in that league.
Come on, guys.
As do I.
Yeah.
As do I.
I'm just surviving. in the loft.
No, I'm hurt. No, I'm hurt. I need to make me a trade.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Connor Rogers alongside Lawrence Jackson, Jay Croucher. No Matthew Berry. He'll be back tomorrow. He's a little DNP today. Load management, veteran rest, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, right. The good thing, Matthew Berry didn't sleep in. He ain't missed work. He just handling some other duties. So I'll sit in his chair today. I was gonna wear like a Matthew Berry shirt or a Matthew Berry costume, because but they definitely got those Matthew Berry costumes at Party City. So I was thinking about it.
Can't imagine anything more terrifying for Halloween, Lawrence, than Matthew Berry.
And we got Halloween coming up, so I had to do it.
Scare your kids.
But we won't talk too much about a man who's not here to defend himself. But a little bit, though, we will. We definitely will.
We'll get these jokes off.
Yeah, and Connor Rogers messaged me last night, the Captain Phillips meme of I am the captain now. So looking forward to a big show from Connor.
I'm in control. My name's still not on the show, but we're slowly working on it. It's still Matthew Berry's Fantasy Football Happy Hour, but I drive the ship today. And with that, let's jump right into the Rotoworld Player news. We have a lot to get through today. Who's eating good, as we do every Wednesday. Lawrence in the house, as he is every Wednesday. We'll get to our start sit, keep it open, close it out. But as we head into a new week of practices here, guys, the big question is on the Jacksonville Jaguars if Trevor Lawrence will play. And of course, Trevor Lawrence, it didn't take long for him to get asked that. So hear from him directly.
So are you playing Thursday?
I'm gonna do everything I can to be out there. I feel a lot better today than I would have thought. So I like how I'm progressing, and I'm gonna do everything I can to be out there on Thursday. I haven't missed a game in my career. Obviously I'm only in my third year, but I take a lot of pride in that, and being available and being there and being able to play and compete every week. I think that's something that I take a lot of pride in. So. We're not at that point yet. We got a couple more days, and we're gonna see how the rest of the week plays out. But definitely, it's something that means a lot to me, is just being out there and one, being out there, but also knowing I can put a good performance out there for my team too, because that doesn't help anyone if I can't. So you gotta ask that question as well.
Lawrence doing everything he can to play Thursday, dealing with the knee injury. Of course, I think the bigger picture here, Lawrence, is that where he was drafted in fantasy, he has not lived up to those expectations. He's been under 20 points in each game this season, 4 of 6 games under 15 fantasy points. Now dealing with an injury on a short week. With the state of quarterbacks this week and bye weeks, you're probably going to start him if he plays, but what can you expect with him in this offense? Yeah,
like you said, he hasn't lived up to par so far this season, even while healthy. You obviously like to have him out there, whatever, how they say this player at this percentage is better than this player. Well, we could say that for Trevor Lawrence and his backup, C.J. Beathard. You'd like to have him out there. They're facing the Saints on the road. The Jaguars they're actually underdogs in this minus one here. So you definitely like to have him here. They just got the lead in the division. From a fantasy perspective, he's a mobile guy. That's a big part of his game. So if he does play, you're going to have to start him, especially if you drafted him as that, right? But you probably have to temper the expectations, because he can move in and out of the pocket and create fantasy points for you in that way. But we're definitely hoping to get him back. He said it was a couple of days away. It's Wednesday today, so now we're 1 day away, so we'll see what happens.
Jay, what jumped out to me on that graphic is one top 10 finish for Trevor Lawrence in the quarterback rankings this year. And you look at the weapons they have, they do a good job of spreading the ball around. He's been comfortable under Doug Peterson, but from a fantasy perspective, strictly the results just haven't seemed to be there.
Yeah, and I lean more to that's just bad luck. I think
Right.
he's playing well. He's been really cruelled by drops this season. I think back mainly to that Week 2 game against Kansas City where there were drops in the end zone. They just haven't been able to convert on third down outside of that Buffalo game where he played well. But the thing with Lawrence is he just has such a high floor because of the rushing element that he adds, and he has so many weapons that I would expect that we've seen the worst of Lawrence so far. And also, for this game against New Orleans, I would expect that he will play. The line has moved from Saints -3 to Saints -1. It's trending back towards Jacksonville. And also, I mean, don't like to play doctor diagnosing off the tape, but it didn't look that bad, the little sprain.
You could be a Twitter fantasy doctor.
Yeah,
maybe that'll be...
You don't,
Good
you don't need
hybrid
no
brand
degree
for
for
you.
that. You
Yeah.
just show up.
Gambling,
make it-
medical advice.
I do like diagnosing.
Fatherly advice.
Put it in the bio.
I do like diagnosing the tape with no credentials whatsoever. But I do think that he will likely play. That's what the market expects. And I think there's a lot of upside the rest of the way for him. I don't think that he's going to be outside the top 10 going forward.
Lawrence, in your rankings, has this injury impacted anyone? And it could go both ways. It could bring a guy like Calvin Ridley down a spot or two. You could look at Travis Etienne and go, man, it might be a big night for Travis Etienne.
Well, yeah,
volume.
you definitely expect them to lean on Travis Etienne more. Like, they've been doing that already. Whether it's been an efficient game or not, they're going to feed Travis Etienne. Even Calvin Ridley himself, he hasn't been blowing up like we expected after that Week 1 matchup. But you definitely I would definitely downgrade Trevor Lawrence. I got him as a quarterback 1 here this week, much like I had him last week. But if he plays, I'll still keep him, in that position. But for the receivers, I don't think it'll change too much. Matter of fact, like I said, his mobility, if anything, would be affected. That will make him stay in the pocket even more.
Yep, and the last thing on Lawrence I'll say is that we spoke yesterday about pass rate over expectation, like which teams actually do throw the ball more, because sometimes the players' pass attempts just get skewed because of game script. I think this is a better thing to look at for how much does the team actually want to throw. The Jags are 4th in the league for pass rate over expectation. Doug Peterson wants to throw the ball. He wants to have it in Trevor Lawrence's hands. And so I think that going forward, there's just no way that this guy can fail with this talent and with his weapons.
Some other notable injuries we're tracking throughout the week. Of course, Trevor Lawrence is at the top, but Jimmy Garoppolo dealing with a back injury. We don't know if it would be Brian Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell officially if Jimmy can't go. Baker Mayfield dealing with a hand injury. Justin Fields is not practicing today with that thumb injury. That does sound like something that should be taken seriously, and we'll keep an eye on Tyson Bagent, his backup that came in when Fields got hurt last week. McCaffrey with the oblique. Jahmyr Gibbs working his way back from the hamstring injury. Same could be said for Jamal Williams, who was on IR, and Deebo Samuel with the shoulder. Lawrence, what's the most notable injury you're tracking on this list?
Well, it would be Justin Fields there not practicing. And to be honest, we saw him not come back in the game. When a player doesn't come back in the game, it's not just nothing. You know what I'm saying? He couldn't grip the football on his throwing hand. We just saw Justin Herbert play with a finger injury, but on his non-throwing hand. When you're dealing with the hand that makes you the money, like, let's just chill out a little bit. So him not practicing doesn't surprise me at all, seeing is that he didn't come back in the game. And it looks like it's trending towards him not playing, still the middle of the week, but the fantasy world around him in Chicago will definitely be affected should he not be able to go.
Jay, what are we looking at panic meter-wise with somebody like Jimmy G, who, yeah, it's Jimmy Garoppolo, but there's a big drop-off to the other 2 quarterbacks on this roster that people are starting Davante Adams. They're starting Jacoby Myers and expecting big things. Josh Jacobs, and now even a guy we'll get to later, and Michael Mayer.
Yeah, I think with Davante Adams, he's almost quarterback proof just because of the talent and the targets that he's going to get, even if it is Brian Hoyer. I just could never envision benching Davante Adams under any circumstance. Jacoby Myers perhaps a bit more susceptible, but still I think he can provide value. The thing is with this week, because it looks like if Jimmy misses, it's probably only going to be 1 week. They have the Bears secondary, which might be the worst in the league. And so I think that just gives you a certain floor with those guys, but even if it is Brian Hoyer or if it's Aiden O'Connell, I think those guys are both going to be viable.
It looks like the total in this game too, 37.5. So they're banking on, Jimmy G. Not that it'd be much higher if it was Jimmy G, but it'd be a little bit higher. Yeah. So when you see, the Raiders -3, That's expected, but the 37.5, that definitely makes it a little scary from a fantasy perspective. If it is a backup quarterback in there playing, just expect them to lean on Josh Jacobs a little bit more.
Let's look at the Niners duo in the same capacity, right, with Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. I mean, this isn't anything we're not accustomed to in fantasy with both these guys with the injuries, and I think there's something to be said. One, Jay, this is really important for you. Big test for Brock Purdy if both of them can't play. And Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle are still out there, so it's not like the Niners are without weapons. But I think it's safe to say that the Niners need to be delicate with both of these veterans who have plenty of injuries in their past.
Yeah, certainly. And the thing with the Niners is that they're only a couple of weeks away from their bye. They play Minnesota Monday night, then they have Cincinnati, and then they're into the bye. So if these guys are dealing with something, they probably have the wiggle room to be able to give them some extra rest. At the same time, it doesn't seem like they do that, and they just throw these guys out there, where Deebo, after getting knocked in the ribs against the Giants, looked like he was done for the game, might be a bad injury, comes back like 2 plays later and is playing, lining up at playing running back. So they just run these guys. I do think the interesting thing here is that just with the damage that McCaffrey has taken and how banged up he is, he was on track for like 400 carries, which is just insane in this day and age. And the sneaky thing with McCaffrey is at the end of last year, he was in a timeshare. They weren't using him as a workhorse back. I think he was dealing with some stuff then. He didn't have more than 15 carries in any game but one of his last 6 last season. So I wouldn't be surprised if they scale it back a little bit. Certainly if he plays this week, I imagine that we're going to see some Mason, going to see some Elijah Mitchell. So I'd maybe temper expectations on McCaffrey even if he does play.
Yeah, he's and if he does play, you have no fear of putting him in. That's not even a question. If he plays, it's not a question of, should I put him in? You just do that as Christian McCaffrey. We rank him every week as the top running back in fantasy. But like you said, Jay, 100% expect especially the carries come down a little bit because he's most accustomed to getting half of his touches in the receiving game. But this season, he's looking like he's trying to run for 2,000 yards. So when he does come back, definitely expect to see some Elijah Mitchell in there.
Yeah, I think with McCaffrey, even if he is tempered, it doesn't really matter because he's still going to be the number 1 running back in fantasy if he's getting 15 carries a game because of the receiving work, because of the touchdown equity. It's more so that maybe Elijah Mitchell actually becomes viable in deeper leagues or Mason becomes viable. And
Elijah Mitchell could get one of those touchdowns too. So.
Our last one here on the panic meter list are really more expectations. Jahmyr Gibbs, he's working his way back from injury. David Montgomery is going to miss some time. We can't say it enough. That's the designation we've been given. Yes, there, of course, is Craig Reynolds factored into this, Jay. But if Gibbs is healthy and Montgomery's not in this backfield, you would think they rely on a guy that was taken with the top 15 selection.
I think so. And I think the most instructive sample that we have here is the game against Atlanta when Montgomery was out. And in that game, Gibbs got 17 carries. If he's getting 17 carries, you add that to what he gives you in the receiving game where he was, what was he, Connor? He's one of the most polished pass-catching running backs
and explosive.
The draft.
Yeah.
So I think that, his ceiling is tempered by Montgomery coming back, but until he doesn't, Gibbs is going to be a massive weapon for them just because they don't, Craig Reynolds just is not particularly threatening going up against a very good Baltimore defense.
They're going to be determined to, like he's not going to get a full workload. Dan Campbell said as much, even in that game versus Atlanta, they worked Craig Reynolds in there, but still Gibbs was able to get the 80 yards on the 17 carries there. But this is a chance to, if you drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, this is your time to shine because it doesn't, David Montgomery's not going to just miss one game. When they say he'll be out a little bit, that usually means multiple. So if you have Jahmyr Gibbs, this is your time to put him in. He's actually in my flex article for this week because he's become we thought he was going to be an RB2 type player, but at this point, he's more of a flex. So I got him in there this week, and I expect him to do something big.
And with the amount of
if he plays,
of course, as we're tracking this, and the amount of touchdown equity that Montgomery has in this offense, it just opens up a little bit more for everybody else. All right, a piece of news here before we move on. The Eagles yesterday signed Julio Jones to a 1-year deal. Julio is back. We haven't seen much of Julio over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I'm picking him up.
I think the question is, Lawrence, not if Julio is fantasy relevant, but can this do anything to affect all of the Eagles that are extremely fantasy relevant, especially in an offense where We've become a little frustrated with Devontae Smith over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I don't really think so too much, and you ain't going to find a bigger Julio fan than myself. But no, I don't think too much. Julio's there. He got like him and A.J. Brown real tight. A.J. Brown was part of getting Julio to get to the Titans. A.J. Brown always looked up to him, used to wear Julio jerseys to the game. So some of that plays into it, but I wanted Julio to play for the Falcons. Like, with that receiver depth, which they need, like, I would have taken him over Matt Hollins and Van Jefferson today. But he's just giving them a little veteran depth. You know, if the hamstrings is good, he'll get him on a deep ball one time. So just some veteran depth around a young receiver group, but I don't think this is a threat to Devontae Smith. I think we just haven't gotten to see the best of Devontae Smith. We saw him drop that key pass against the Jets, which that would have brought his fantasy points up exponentially. Like, he had room to go after that, but he couldn't bring it in. So, no, I don't think this is a threat to any Eagles receivers in any way.
I think it's bad news for Olamide Zaccheaus. Outside of that, though, I mean, Quez Watkins is on IR, which has probably precipitated this move, but I can't imagine Julio is going to eat into Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown at this point.
All right, our last piece of news here. Anthony Richardson officially elects for season-ending shoulder surgery. A really disappointing end to what was such a promising rookie season. This is somebody that, was one of the more explosive players in the NFL at that position. He was one of the guys in the mix for the Rookie of the Year. The Colts offense was very different under him because of his physical talent. And Jay, I think now you move over to Gardner Minshew, where we've had this discussion. With Gardner Minshew, you like Josh Downs a little bit more. Michael Pittman has just fed so many targets. I think without Richardson, it probably elevates the backfield in terms of the touchdown opportunities. But this offense becomes significantly less explosive.
Yeah, and just less exciting,
right,
which is what makes this such a bummer. But I think that, look, the sneaky thing, Minshew was terrible last week. He was absolutely terrible. And even in the Baltimore game that they won a couple of weeks ago, Minshew took 5 sacks, wasn't very good in that game either. They're going to use their running backs more as a result. So Jonathan Taylor's value goes up. We'll see what Zach Moss's usage is. And then for guys like Pittman and Downs, they're going to see more passing. Minshew's just going to throw the ball more than Richardson did. But Connor, I'm interested just for the future outlook of Anthony Richardson. Like, what did you see from him this year? Do you think that going forward, like, he's a guy who's going to be taken as a top 5 quarterback next season?
I think with the rushing ability, he should always be viewed in that light because the rushing sets his floor, and we saw him throw down the field. So what more can you ask for? I think what's concerning is, and I'll throw this to you as well, Lawrence, Richardson, who didn't get to play a lot at Florida, he was really great in his one season as a full-time starter. He took some tough hits this year. We saw him go through the concussion protocol. Now we see him go through the season-ending shoulder surgery. If you're Shane Steichen, knowing the upside this guy has as a pass catcher, does that make you cautious going forward with your play calling for Richardson as a runner?
Well, I don't know. You know why? Because I don't know if you could do that and be the best that you could be.
I agree.
Like, Jalen Hurts was on his way to 1,000 rushing yards and 4,000 passing yards. He got hurt at the end of the regular season, but they let him go. You know what I'm saying? So Steichen did that with Jalen Hurts. There's no way the Colts offense going forward could be their best if you do hold back. But what we did see from Anthony Richardson, and thankfully we saw him get out of the blocks good. Because, if he didn't, then there would be more questions. Like, he looked better in these 3 or 4 games, however much he played. He looked better in these pro games than he did in some games at Florida.
I agree.
So it just goes to show you, what's around you, who's calling your plays. That can affect you. As far as their offense now, Jay mentioned about how Gardner Minshew wasn't that good against the Jags. The good thing about that is not for the Colts, it's not good, but the good thing for fantasy is you'll be in throwing situations. And we saw Michael Pittman see a season high 14 targets, 9 catches, 109 yards because they was getting blown out, so they were having to come back. And from a division perspective, I thought the Colts, prior to Anthony Richardson getting hurt, was definitely in play to win that division. Now, not so much with the Jaguars having a strong stranglehold on that now.
I think it's a massive concern that he played 4 games and he got injured in 3 of them. Like, that's very unusual. And they're all contact injuries.
Well, he had the concussion,
Yeah, and then in the first game, he hurt himself as well against the Jags. So, I mean, that is a concern. Hopefully that's just fluky randomness and he can get himself right for next season. But, something to monitor. He's just the way that he plays and coming off this history, he's going to be a big injury risk next year.
I'll tell you an interesting stat on him, too, fantasy-wise. So he missed the 2 full games. He basically missed 3 full games of the 5 or 6. He still has more fantasy points than Joe Burrow and Geno Smith as we sit here today.
Wow. Geno Smith catching strays.
Yeah. I'm just giving props to Anthony Richardson and using good quarterbacks to amplify that. So Anthony Richardson, get well soon. I will be drafting you again.
With that, let's move to Who's Eating Good, served by Applebee's. We do this every week, and essentially players that are hot right now, and we ask the question, is this sustainable? And we start with someone who, it's amazing we're still having this conversation, Jay. Adam Thielen right now. I mean, he's coming off a Week 6 where he had 28.5 points. He finishes as wide receiver 2 in fantasy. But this wasn't just a big week for Adam Thielen. This has been Adam Thielen's entire season in an offense that is getting really nothing from anyone else, which maybe gives you some hope. I don't know if he keeps up being a top 5 wide receiver, but top 10, top 15 in play?
I mean, I think it's in play. The thing that you look most for with wide receivers, I think, for stability of their performance going forward is just targets. And the targets he's seeing are completely insane. He's gotten 13-plus targets in 3 of his past 4 games. After week 3 or so, we were thinking, all right, this is the high point for Adam Thielen. He's just getting better every week. And you look at his game log, this is like looking at Cooper Kupp 2021. Like, it's insane.
It is.
The amount of receptions he's getting. And also, the thing is, too, is that he's getting in the end zone. He's got 4 touchdowns already, scored those 4 in his past 5 games. So I think, look, I don't think he's going to be a top 5 wide receiver going forward, but I think top 10, if he stays healthy, is perfectly on the cards.
A lot of people are feeling, that is some graphic.
I actually
right there.
called this before the
just
season.
like we drew it up.
Top 5.
A lot of question that some may have is, do we sell high on them on Thielen now that he's in the bye? Well, if you ended up with Adam Thielen on your roster, that's you playing with house money, unless you have Justin Jefferson or somebody who got injured. But you playing with house money. I would tell people, if you're thinking about selling Adam Thielen high, think about this. Their next game, they have the Texans. That don't scare you too much. Then they got Indy. They don't either. Then they got Chicago. They don't either. You got Dallas, but then you got the Titans. So 4 of those 5 matchups and we're talking about Bryce Young, who's getting a little better now.
Yes.
He's thrown for at least 200 in the past 3 games, and he's throwing the ball 36.5 times a game. And they're going to have to do that. Just they're 0-6. This is their thing. They get behind. They was up 14 on the Dolphins, but then they got behind. So now they're throwing again. They're in that game script. And and Bryce Young is locked in on this dude. 10 targets a game tells you nothing but that.
Do you think Bryce Young has gotten better over the course of the season?
I thought this right out of the first half, right out of the gate. That's the closest he's looked to Alabama, Bryce Young. And of course, reality hits. You don't want to get into a track meet with Miami. They're going to make adjustments against you in the second half. But in terms of seeing the field, throwing with anticipation, throwing with confidence and on time and accurately, this was his best performance. And that alone makes me align with you, Lawrence, that I'm not selling Adam Thielen right now.
You could sell him, but it better be because everything is negotiable.
Yes.
But oversell, play your hand, and bring this up, hey man, he got the Houston Texans and the Bears and the Colts, make it dress it up real nice.
And it feels like with so many other offenses, we see somebody poised for a breakout. We talk about it with Rashee Rice every week. We talk about it across the league. With the Panthers, I mean, Mingo is a solid rookie, but he's not going to overtake the volume in this offense. This is Adam Thielen for the year, barring him being moved at the deadline, which would only probably help you maybe in fantasy.
We're 6 games in. So it ain't nothing crazy unless Thielen goes down. But there's nothing. This is how it's going to be.
If the draft was held tomorrow, would you be taking Stroud over Young now, or is it flipped enough? Or do you think that Young is still the guy?
I would never move off an evaluation in the first year,
Yeah,
but it was close for a reason.
Yeah.
They were both easily top 8 players in the draft, and you could flip them either way depending what you want your offense to be. I think the NFL would take Stroud over him. I really do.
Yeah, I don't think even on draft day, if C.J. Stroud would have went to the Panthers and Bryce Young,
You'd be like, okay.
nobody would have said nothing crazy.
No.
Anthony Richardson going first would have shocked some people. It would have shocked it. Like it would have been some talk about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know you had Levis 1.
Yeah.
Where is he going to
Don't
start
tell
for
the
the
good people
Titans?
that.
He's
He's got to play eventually. All right, our next player here, Lawrence, Rhamondre Stevenson. It had not been a good season for the first 5 weeks for Rhamondre Stevenson, but he, in week 6, finally gets the volume in the pass game. I mean, tied a season high in targets against the Raiders. The Patriots, there's a lot of problems with this offense right now, but if they want to dig out of this, they have to keep it rolling with their best offensive player in Rhamondre.
Yeah, and I'm not going to do the straw man comment right here and say, sell high on Rhamondre, because no one's
a
gonna,
dummy.
No one's going to be buying after one good game, especially when it was 10 carries for 46 yards, and he got the touchdown, but so did Zeke. Ezekiel Elliott has been outperforming Rhamondre Stevenson on a weekly basis. Both of them scored. Rhamondre Stevenson was RB6 in week 6, right? Zeke was running back 20, and it only took him 8 touches to do that. So he ate good in week 6, and I'm not gonna tell you to sell high because that's just me trying to fill Showtime. But if you got Rhamondre Stevenson, enjoy that. I know we all said last week that we was going to close out the tab, but congrats to him on having a decent week. But I don't know if he'll be able to do that going forward, especially with Buffalo coming up. Then you get Miami, who he ran 50 yards on 15 carries against. Then you got Washington and Indy. But, I don't know about that. Zeke, matter of fact, he had a long touchdown called back with a holding call. He hit the screen, ran about 6. Looked like Ohio State Zeke, to be honest. But, I'm good on Stevenson. Look, there you go right there.
Well, speaking of that run, Lawrence, that got nullified by the holding penalty from Zeke where he took it 74 yards on the pass from Mac Jones. This is the most incredible stat that I saw all week. On that play, Zeke reached a top speed of over 20 miles per hour. It was the 10th fastest speed that anyone clocked in the NFL this season. He was faster on that play than Tony Pollard was on his 60-yard reception on Monday night.
I don't
understand it at all. Like, how is Zeke
that's
fast?
insane.
How is he fast
They could
now?
kind of be using him right now, but that's another day. But yeah, like I didn't even know the miles per hour he was running.
Yeah.
I saw that play.
Fast.
I'm like, damn, he looked like Ohio State Zeke right here. And that number of over 20 miles an hour tells you that. Zeke might have lost he might have took something off the little torso there.
Yep.
He
Good thing that he's using this season in New England.
Yes, great timing for revitalization.
something?
All right, our last player here, Michael Mayer, the rookie tight end out of Notre Dame. A big breakout week for the Raiders. The targets were there for him. He finishes with 12.5 fantasy points because he does not get in the end zone. But the last 2 weeks, we've seen Mayer involved in this offense. And Jay, this is a player that in college, the last 2 years, 138 catches, over 1,600 yards, 16 touchdowns. And it's not like he played D3 football. He was playing against big-time opponents for Notre Dame. The pass-catching ceiling for this guy is huge. And it's like the Raiders finally woke up weeks 5 and 6, as you see on the screen, and said, oh, yeah, we drafted this guy at the top of the 2nd round. Maybe we should get him involved over Austin Hooper.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because historically, rookie tight ends just have not really produced. Now we have Sam Laporta, who's quietly having the greatest rookie tight end season in NFL history. And then we also have Luke Musgrave, who's getting involved, and Michael Mayer now that the Raiders have woken up to him, as you noted, Connor. And I think there is room just because it's never happened for your man Hunter Renfrow. It's just not happening in that offense. And the offense has just been, all right, is Devontae open? He's not. All right, throw it to Jacoby. Jacoby open? No, throw it to Devontae. There is room for a third pass catcher on that team. And, do you think this is sustainable that he can be a top 8 tight end going forward?
Well, think about how low the bar is for what you just asked. So I think absolutely yes.
Can be better than Pat Frymouth?
Right? Seriously.
I think it's,
If you're looking for a tight end, especially during Buymageddon, your waiver wire might be Jonnu Smith. It might be.
He might be worth the pickup.
And Jonnu Smith has been good this year, by the way. He might not even be on your waiver wire anymore. We're really dealing with scraps right now. That I think Michael Mayer, if you start from last week and just go till the end of the season, I think he'll be a top 8 tight end in fantasy.
I would buy that. Played a season high 82% of the snaps in week 6.
That's the key.
That's up from week 5, which was 66. So that shows he's getting more involved. And then you look at who they got coming up next. They got the Bears, who are the 7th worst against tight ends in fantasy. Then you got the Lions, who are 4th worst against tight ends in fantasy. You got the New York Jets coming in there, great defense, but 2nd worst against tight ends. So, that's something to go off of, especially when you see a player getting involved, not just the snap share, but with that 5 receptions for 75 yards on 6 targets. If you're telling me Michael Mayer could get 5 to 6 targets every game at the way the tight end position is now, then I'm going to be in on that.
Yeah. What you noted about the bar being so low, like we're living in a world where Cole Kmet right now is tight end 5. Dalton Schultz is tight end 7. I think Mayer can be better than both those guys going forward.
I think so too. And if you're Josh McDaniels coaching for your job right now, you need to show the players you brought in are a part of the system. He's done a good job of that with Jacoby Myers. That looks like a great signing. Now you need to do it with your 2nd-round pick, and they're finally leaning that way. NBA season tips off next week, but there's still time to get some last-minute cramming for your fantasy drafts. We've got you covered with the Rotoworld Basketball Draft Guide, which includes all the rankings, player outlooks, and projections you need to win your league this year. Go to NBCSports.com to get your draft guide now and use code HOOPS23 to save 20% off and receive a $10 Fanatics gift card. We're taking our first break. When we're back, coming right up, Kirk Cousins' interesting choice in pregame music and whether we'd start or sit him this week and keep it open or close it out. We're in the final stages of the toughest competition of the year. Check out the Rugby World Cup semifinals on Friday and Saturday. This week, Argentina faces New Zealand on the top half of the bracket, while England does battle with South Africa on the other side. You can watch both matches live on Peacock, with games also available on CNBC.
It does feel really good to win on the road in the division. And Garrett Bradbury in the locker room pregame took a clip from the Texas Rangers and made sure that Creed got played before he went out in the field, and I felt like that may have made the difference. So, the Rangers have been playing Creed and they're rolling the playoffs, and we've been listening to it in the lifts a little bit here and there, but music's banging on the boombox most pregames and in the locker room. We thought we'd mix up the genre a little bit, get some Creed in there.
Keep it open or close it out. That was Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins, and because of that, Vikings players, you drink free. Because, guys, I genuinely think Kirk Cousins likes Creed. I don't think that was a bit.
Yeah. My takeaway from that is I like the Niners -6.5 on Monday Night Football.
I was thinking the same thing. That'll be a key pick for me this week.
Unbelievable. Texas Rangers winning because of Creed, not Jordan Montgomery or Nathan Uvalde. Creed getting it done in the ALCS.
Lawrence, what was your exact quote before we came back on? I don't know anything about Creed.
Yeah, I don't know nothing about Creed, so I can only imagine if I was a player in that locker room, I'd have been pissed. Like, I've heard Justin Jefferson before scream at Kirk Cousins for not throwing. Like, he'd be like, throw the damn ball, Kirk. And I think some of that frustration, now that we know that's what's getting played in the locker room, it might come from that. So.
You had a good description of Creed.
Oh, wow, I'm not sure we can.
Yeah, it's maybe not show worthy, but
y'all go listen to it.
Yeah, you'll figure it out for yourself. All right, with that, we'll get into keep it open or close it out. It's our start-sit portion of the week, and we do start with Kirk Cousins because he has the 49ers. It might feel weird to ask at this state of quarterbacks right now, Lawrence, can you keep it open with Kirk Cousins? But the 49ers defense is scary, and this is an offense now without one of the best players in the league in Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, well, look on the bright side. The Vikings are at home. Psych, I'm not leaving that open. I'm going to close out on Kirk Cousins. Weeks 1 through 3, he was the top quarterback in fantasy. The last 3 weeks, however, he's been quarterback 19. That's just him. That's going against anybody else but the Niners. Now you're going against this Niners defense who pretty much humiliates everybody. They humiliate all these quarterbacks, ones that we may consider better than Kirk Cousins. They allowed the 3rd fewest points in fantasy points per game this season. Since week 4, Kirk Cousins has had less than 300 yards passing the game. That's kind of why we like Kirk Cousins, because, he's got Justin Jefferson. He can throw the ball 40 times a game and get you those. Maybe it's a 4-touchdown, 2-interception game, but that's good for fantasy. I don't know if we'll get that this week against the Niners, even at home, even at the Dome. So I got to close it today on Kirk, but maybe he'll get back on track after this.
Yeah, Matthew's got him ranked QB 14. I think that's about right, where you're not super excited if you're starting him in a standard league. At the same time, the Vikings do throw the ball a ton. It's just not a great sign that the first game without Justin Jefferson against a very weak Chicago secondary, he put up 8.7 fantasy points. Niners have a bit better of a defense than Chicago, so you're not starting Kirk with confidence.
Our next one, Rachaad White, he's got the Falcons this week, and for Barry, he comes in as RB20. Here's the thing, Lawrence, Atlanta's been good against running backs this year, and Rachaad White in this Bucs running game has had no juice most of the season.
Yeah, interesting thing. I actually wrote about Rachaad White earlier this week in my stock report. His stock's going down despite the fact that he's pretty much he's been the lead back in that role. We're now starting to see Keyshawn Vaughn cut into that. But it'll get left open this week for me for these reasons. There's 6 teams on a bye week. We struggling. We just lost David Montgomery. We may get CMC, we may not. So that's 2 of the top running backs right there, plus the 6 bye weeks. I don't know if you can afford to bench a player who you know is going to get 15 touches. And if you're gritting your teeth having to start Rachaad White, just know that while the Falcons are good against the run, they did give up 2 receiving touchdowns last week to Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. And for this season, Rachaad White is averaging 3.5 targets per game, which isn't crazy, but it's nice for a running back. So we'll leave it open, but we leaving it open.
Yeah, you're not very excited about Rachaad White, but the fact that he has 16 receptions on the season, the Bucs 2.5-point favorites in that NFC South blockbuster. Bit of a bonus one, Connor. Are you worried about Bijan Robinson?
No, I'm always worried about Arthur Smith, but I think, no, when I look at Bijan, he'll be fine. I think, once again, this offense is always kind of leaning somewhere else week to week. Drake London being unlocked is a good sign for the Falcons and Drake London, and maybe takes a little off the plate of Bijan, who we thought could be this 30-touch guy, 25-touch guy. I'm not worried yet.
That last play, Bijan was split out left against Jamin Davis. They run a slant. You get that route, you get the linebacker out there, you run go route when it's man coverage. He ran the slant, they paid for it, Ritter throws the pick.
Yeah, he keeps saying after every game that he's sore, which I don't love. Not sure if he's physically sore or sore of Tyler Algier out carrying him, but yeah, I would hopefully Bijan can explode at some point, given he's clearly got the talent.
Yeah, it's a fair question. All right, our next one, another young running back with a lot of talent. That's Javonte Williams. He's got the Packers on deck this week, and Green Bay, they allow the 4th most points per game to running backs this season. But on the flip side, Jay, besides health, there's not a lot going for Javonte Williams in an offense that we see Samaje Perine, we see Jaleel McLaughlin, we see Russ run a little bit, and of course throw. It's just hard to have a ton of confidence in such a promising young player because of the situation he's in.
Yeah, I think what this just comes down to when you see that he had 35% of the snaps against Kansas City on the Thursday night. Now, he's coming off the injury. There's been an extended break, and that'll help him. But the reality is he's on a bad team in a 3-headed monster. And that just generally is not a good recipe for putting up stats. And it just seems like it's kind of trending towards Jaleel McLaughlin, who's been the best performer of these 3 guys, Lawrence.
Yeah, he's actually, Jaleel McLaughlin is actually running back 25 on the season, and he ain't even played 2 games this season, right? Javonte Williams had 1 more touch than Jaleel McLaughlin in week 6. He had 1 more fantasy point, and McLaughlin is a different type of player. He's their explosive and guy who has the suddenness. He's their guy that he could hit the home run every play. You don't really think about Javonte Williams in that fashion. So I would actually probably rather, knowing that they're all playing a similar amount of snaps with Samaje Perine included, McLaughlin would be the guy that I would actually prefer to start right now.
One of these 3, they're going to fall in the end zone against Green Bay. But like you said, Jay, it's a 3-headed monster. And it's a total even split of who is going to fall in the end zone.
Yeah,
could be Perine.
Probably be Javonte, but then Jaleel has more upside to break one and get more work in the passing game. So I don't even think you feel great about any of these guys.
Right. And another guy kind of in the same mold right now that you don't feel great about, he comes in as RB37 for Barry. That's Gus Edwards against the Lions. Detroit has been a powerhouse against running backs this season. They've allowed the fewest points to running backs all year. with Gus. There hasn't been a lot going for him in this Ravens offense. You might be up against it because of the bye weeks and the injuries, but I don't know how you keep it open with Gus Edwards right now.
No, and I mean, he's had a tough run with the schedule where he's played the Titans run D, played Cleveland's defense a few weeks ago. Now he gets the Detroit defense, which, to your point, Connor, has allowed the fewest points to running backs this season. So I'd be closing it out on Gus. He's averaging 3.9 yards per carry. I think the way to beat Detroit is probably through the air. This is an interesting matchup. The line is Ravens -3. Not a lot of respect for the Detroit Lions. Ravens coming back from London as well. Look, Gus Edwards is getting the carries, but there's just been no efficiency on the ground, and it's a tough matchup.
Yeah, he's going to have to get a touchdown for this to pay off here. Under 2.5 yards per carry the past 2 games. Single-digit fantasy points in 5 of the 6 games this season. You got Justice Hill working in there. Now, when you face a top run defense, it almost goes out the window when you got Lamar Jackson at quarterback, and that makes it even more crazy that Gus Edwards isn't being able to eat, because perennially he's like a 5 yards per carry type of guy. That's just not been happening this season. Oh, and another thing, I don't know if it'll be this week, but slowly but surely Eatin Mitchell is coming. He's coming. Connor, you know about him.
Oh, yeah, speed.
He'll be
speed for days.
He'd be the best running back in that room now without J.K. Dobbins if they let him get there. Played a little special teams just to, it was his first NFL game, but Eatin Mitchell, he coming.
He could be the Ravens' Julio McLaughlin, is how I see that one.
Yeah.
We've spoken more about Eatin Mitchell on this show than any platform
I heard Sundays,
in American media.
One day, damn it.
We generally did 15 minutes on Sunday.
Yeah, I've heard this.
Should we talk about Cooper Kupp, Jonathan Taylor return? No, let's talk about Eatin Mitchell. Can he actually, though, in seriousness, what's his upside in this offense?
He's a smaller player. He's never going to be a workhorse running back or even necessarily a guy that is in an even split. I think McLaughlin is a great comparison of usage, right? Pass catching back, explosive playability. You brought up how they probably like to keep him on special teams, Lawrence. That makes a lot of sense for him.
This is a different type of running. The Ravens don't usually draft these backs that actually have great vision. They usually, like a Gus Edwards or Justice Hill, those type of guys are just like, getting
Greg
straight
Roman
to the
style
middle.
backs, and now they have
Right.
Munkin. That's
so
the
now they
difference.
got a guy with some agility, some vision. So we'll see what happens. But we closing it on Gus Edwards this week.
Yep.
For sure. All right, a really interesting one here that has to do with the injuries we showed at the top of the show. DJ Moore against the Raiders. You obviously love the player, love the matchup, Lawrence. Don't necessarily love the quarterback situation he could be dealing with. And it's nothing against a guy like Tyson Bagent, but a small school quarterback that's being thrust into a situation on the fly. Do you think this maybe opens up some manufactured touches for DJ Moore, or this completely eliminates the big playability, which makes him so special?
It'll be tough. The good thing about, and the reason I'll keep it open for him this week is, DJ Moore, he'll beat you deep, or he could get it short and run a long play to the end zone. After Justin Fields went down, DJ Moore was still able to finish the game with 8 targets, hit for 5 for 51. That could have very well been his stat line regardless, whether it was with Justin Fields or not. It's just that he's been blowing up the past 2 games, that like this 5 for 51, and that's 10 fantasy points. You're like, oh man, that like it kind of sucks when you're coming off this right here, which you're looking at on the screen, 230 yards. But again, because of the buys and the injuries, a receiver that's hurt is Justin Jefferson out there. I don't see how you'll bench. Like he might not even be in your flex. DJ Moore's your wide receiver 2 in your lineups this week, even with the former Division II quarterback in there. Now we'll cut him some slack. This dude didn't think he was playing football on Sunday. Had the interception, took a sack here. Whatever, it's his first game. Right. Now he'll get a week to prepare, and it should be better. Not expecting anything great, but if Moore can get the targets, we rocking with it. I'm keeping it open.
Yeah, Matthew's got DJ Moore ranked wide receiver 25. Just as a general rule, when in one of your past 2 starts you've gone 8 for 230 with 3 touchdowns, you probably just have to start that guy for the next kind of 3 weeks at least. And I think here's the thing with DJ Moore. Like, yes, it's a drop-off from Justin Fields. It's not like Justin Fields is an amazing passer of the ball. Like, I think that he will be able to get his touches. But, I mean, what do you think about Tyson Bagent? Is he going to be good enough to get the ball to DJ Moore?
If Luke Getsy is good enough, which is always the problem with this Bears offense. Getsy has had a roller coaster year, and that's being really polite right now. So I think when you look at Bagent, like you said, Lawrence, he wasn't probably expecting to play. He didn't come into the year as their number 2 quarterback.
Right.
He can do enough to play pitch and catch point guard in this offense, and that's DJ Moore. Like DJ Moore, you don't need to take these deep drops and these slow developing routes. This is the type of game where if I have Tyson Bagent under center, I'm throwing DJ Moore at least 5 screens, and that could be.
And one of those could go.
And legitimate screens, shallow crossers, pitch passes, get the ball in his hands, and hope a big play
They're going to have
happens.
to hit him with the screen and go, because if we know that, I hope
The Raiders
Vegas
are sitting on it, 100%. 100%. Our next wide receiver on the list, Romeo Doubs. He's got the Broncos defense. Barry has him as wide receiver 45 this week, Jay. Before week 5, Doubs had 12 targets in back-to-back games, and now feels like a little bit of an afterthought for somebody that seemed so consistent at one time.
Yeah, I'm keeping it open on Romeo Doubs. That Vegas game was just very strange. Nothing seemed to make sense in it. Christian Watson got the big catch, but outside of that, nothing was clicking in the Packers offense. They're healthier now coming off the bye. And I just think that, to your point, Connor, getting 12-plus targets in back-to-back weeks as 2 of your past 3 games, I just don't think that can be dismissed. And also, his first 2 weeks weren't great, but he's coming off an injury, and he was on a bit of a pitch count. So I'm not giving up yet on Romeo Doubs. There is the chance, though, that maybe Christian Watson just ruins his value completely, and Jordan Love isn't good enough to be able to provide value to 2 different wide receivers. But I wouldn't put a line through Romeo Doubs yet. And you're not terrified of the matchup, certainly against Denver, which has been one of the worst defenses in the league.
Yeah, that last game where he caught 1 pass for 4 yards, it'll be right in the middle of that and getting 13 targets. And you could live with that in a flex spot on your fantasy lineups versus a Denver Broncos team that is giving up the 12th most points to receivers in fantasy. He's still their starting receiver. Again, folks, this is about the matchup for this particular week and what the Broncos have been giving up. So it's not like we're saying, Romeo Doubs, rest of the season, throw him in there. Nah, this is matchup specific. He's still playing 77% of the snaps, so we're going to leave it open for Doubs this week.
How do you think the Packers are using him differently to how he was used at Nevada? Do you think that he has more scope in this offense, or is this just going to be the Christian Watson show?
I think with Nevada, it was simplified for him, where it was really almost a 3-route tree. He could run deep, you could sit on a screen, and you might run some form of something underneath, usually shallow crosser, slants. You're getting the ball, and it's really the DJ Moore special, where get the ball in his hand short or go deep. And I think with Green Bay under LaFleur, it's a little bit more complicated than that, where you're going to run a full route tree. You're dealing with a quarterback that Jordan Love had a nice start to the season. He's not playing in timing and rhythm anymore. And that's my fear with Doubs, is that he's a timing and rhythm player, at least in this offense, not his college offense, with a quarterback that is young. He's a first-year starter. Not killing him for that, but it's just not there yet.
Yep.
So our last pass catcher on this list, last player on this list, Lawrence, Tyler Higbee. He's got the Steelers, and we'll have more on that game in our next segment. Here's the thing, Lawrence. Since Cooper Kupp's been back, Higbee's averaging under 4 points a game. But on the flip side of it, we talked about how low the bar is to clear to be a playable tight end right now.
Yeah, and even with that, I'm going to leave it closed for this week. Matter of fact, I would start Kyle Pitts ahead of him. That's not a question to me now at this point, now that they've done something. But I would go with Jonnu Smith over him as well. Like you said, the past 2 games, 2 receptions each, I didn't think he would go down this far due to the return. I thought Tutu Atwell might have taken a little hit, and he did, but I didn't think Higbee, who does have rapport with Matthew Stafford, I didn't think he would go that low, especially because the game before Cooper Kupp came back, Tyler Higbee had 11 targets in that last game, 5 for 64. Like, you'll live with that. But that, it went drastically down. So for this week against Pittsburgh, I got to leave it closed.
Okay, I'm actually keeping it open on Tyler Higbee. I don't feel great about it. But here's the thing, is that in the 2 games that Kupp has played and come back in, against the Eagles, the Rams only had the ball for 22 minutes. They just could not get their defense off the field against Philly. And then against Arizona, Stafford only threw the ball 24 times because they had a lead the whole time, and also they narrowly lost time of possession too. So I think Higbee is still going to be the third guy in this passing offense, and I think they're going to throw enough in a more normal game that he can have value. But yeah, don't feel great about it.
Right. I do like the matchup though, Jay.
Yes.
I'm with you on that. We are eating good in the neighborhood this Sunday when the Fantasy Football pregame show broadcasts live from Applebee's in Philadelphia. The restaurant at 1942 Roosevelt Boulevard opens at 10:30 a.m. and pregame kicks off at 11. Come on out early to start your tailgate party with us this Sunday and ask your sit-start questions ahead of the big Sunday Night Football matchup between the Dolphins and Eagles. And if you're not in Philly, you can watch the show live on Peacock and on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. We're taking one more break. When we're back, which Week 7 sides and totals have caught our eye for last call? Don't forget, on DraftKings Sportsbook this season, new customers can bet $5 and pocket $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, all customers can get a no-sweat same-game parlay every day. Download the app and use the promo code BERRY when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. All right, guys, let's take a look here at our early line alert for Week 7. A couple of different totals and spreads courtesy of our friends at DraftKings, as you see on the board here. Jay, I've heard you have your eyes on Cardinals-Seahawks. What side are you leaning, though?
I'm leaning on the Seattle Seahawks, Connor. I think the thing here is that think about how the Bengals completely lit up the Cardinals 2 weeks ago. They fixed Joe Burrow, fixed Ja'Marr Chase, goes for 192 and 3 touchdowns. And then think what the Seattle defense did to the Bengals, where they kept them to 4 yards per play. Seattle should have won that game. They really blew it at the end there. So I think the Seattle defense sneakily, Devin Witherspoon playing like a defensive rookie of the year frontrunner. That defense is a lot better than it was last year. I just think Geno, DK, Tyler gives you such a high floor on offense. I think the Cardinals have become themselves. I think they're a bottom 3 team in the league. And I think this line should be closer to double digits.
I like it. Lawrence, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Lions at Ravens here. Ravens -3, and I think that if you're feeling like the Lions, because they have the third best offense and they've been clicking on all cylinders, I think this is a trap. The Ravens have left a lot of meat on the bone as far as their offense goes. They haven't been hitting on all cylinders, and we talked about the Lions being tough against the run. Well, not so much as the passing game. They're middle of the pack when it comes to that. I would take an alternate spread on the Ravens, matter of fact.
All right, I'm staying in the AFC North as well, and looking at the Steelers traveling to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. Spread's only 3. I like the Rams a lot in this game, guys. I'm looking at it, and here's the one key thing for me. Pittsburgh has the 28th ranked pass defense since Week 3. I don't know how they're going to cover Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. They're going to stop Matthew Stafford. Maybe Tyler Higbee actually gets involved.
Yep, no, I like that. Referendum game on Kenny Pickett. If he's no good out of the bye, big problem.
Oh, man, it's going to be tough. All right, guys, well, that's it for us. We will be back tomorrow. Matthew will be back tomorrow. For Lawrence, for Jay, I'm Connor. As one man once said, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See you tomorrow.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.